Hello, how's it going? What an exciting time this is. This is our third endpoint that we're going to add, and this will, and we're basically incrementally adding value to our application. Like, you know, every time we do something, it's just adding new value, and it's amazing. It's really exciting, and I can't wait. So let's get started. This endpoint will basically allow people to say, well, get me this by ID, this, right? So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Yeah, so let's do it. So let's do a pretty simple one for now, and then we'll kind of make it more complicated as time goes, right? So we'll say get by ID, so by ID / ID, and then we'll accept the ID. So to-do list ID, right? So pretty simple. You can say that this thing reflects, I don't know, people could be like, you know, you could have a client that's like an Angular client or like a mobile app, which will call this list, call this endpoint every time. Like, you know, if you've got a list that's shared with people and you want to see like any changes happening to it, you can kind of call this endpoint, like, and the thingy could so that your client could poll on this endpoint every kind of once every second or something like that, and it kind of then you get a lot less information, right? Because if you have 10 or if you've got 50 different lists, and if you're calling all get all the time, and you're really only interested in one of them, then you're just wasting a lot of bandwidth, and you're wasting a lot of processing power on kind of both ends. But if you're only interested in one, and if you only say, like, you know, oh, get me just that one, it's just really easy for the server to serve you, because all of these IDs, once we get a proper database, it'll be all indexed, so it'll kind of make it nicer as well. So the retrieval times for one ID will be much quicker than like getting all of them. And also, it's a lot less work as well, because the server has to kind of get it and then get the object from the database, and then kind of serialize the object into like a JavaScript object, then kind of like pass it down to your kind of like function or like whatever your service that it's got, and then your service then pass it down to the router, and your router then will pass it down to the parser, which will then parse it into a JSON string on the server end, and then the actual JSON string will get served up to the client. The client will get the JSON string. It will again serialize the object into like an actual object on the other side. So if it's an Apple Swift application, then it'll be a Swift object, whatever that object's called. Or if it's an Angular client, then it's again a JavaScript object. So you have to kind of like read the JSON character by character and kind of like parse it out, and then your Angular application then has to do something with it, right? So it's a lot of processing power if the objects are kind of bigger, but if you're only kind of passing down what's needed, then it's much easier for the client to handle that kind of load. And it's pretty simple, really. What we're doing here, we'll basically call a similar thing like we did in the get all function, but it will be like a find by ID type function. And yeah, so find by ID, ID, error, to-do list, and then yeah, and then sort of if there's an error again, we could probably externalize this into a function, but for now I'll just do this. Error res.status send, and then we'll say res.send to-do list, because we know that this is an object. We don't really have to wrap it around anything, so we'll just send the object out. And then yeah, one more thing, because this is find by ID, we actually need to tell the service what the ID is, right? So so I'm just going to add to-do list ID here, and then it's probably going to complain. It will say, but Manthan, that thing doesn't exist. Well, okay, just calm down, IntelliJ. Just give me some time, and I'll define it in a minute. Pretty straightforward. So we'll do var, and we'll say to-do list ID equals request dot params dot to-do list ID, right? So if you have watched any of the previous episodes of the Node.js tutorial series, you would this is like screaming at you. It's basically that is exactly as that, right? And then we're basically retrieving it out from the URL, and then we're just passing it down to the service, so that it knows that it has to find by this ID exactly, and then it will find it, right? So yeah, so that looks good. So save that, and we will go to the service and then add that endpoint. So add that function, really. So this dot find by ID equals function find to-do lists by ID, and we'll add a new ID argument here, because it actually expects an ID argument. And then we'll add a callback here. So simple callback, and then yeah, boom, right? It's pretty simple. And we'll basically, for now, because this is a stub service again, this is not really a database. This is not the ideal scenario. We'll basically just loop through the to-do list, right? So we'll just say, well, you know what? Let's just loop through using a simple for loop. So I equals 0, I less than to-do list dot length, and then we'll say if var to-do list equals to-do lists I, if to-do list dot id equals, we're going to do a type equals exactly as that, return callback with the to-do list. Perfect. And we don't need to break out or anything. At this point, if we don't get it, then we'll just return callback undefined. Right, so I forgot to define that, undefined here. Right, so that's pretty straightforward as we're looking at it right now. We've got a for loop that's wrapping around our to-do lists, the lists, all the to-do lists here. And then we're extracting each by ID, and then we're saying if the .id field is equals to ID, the one that's been passed in, then just return the callback, right? Just call the callback with no errors, but the actual to-do list to be retrieved. And at this point, it will obviously quit out the loop, and it won't really continue the loop, and it will say recycles as well. Else, if we didn't really find anything, then just call the callback with undefined and undefined. Now, you don't have to provide both of these. You can just do this, right? But I quite like to explicitly say that this is the case because this is a good habit to have. First of all, because it means that it clearly conveys your intent. It clearly conveys what you're trying to do, right? So here it clearly means that I'm passing explicitly undefined, and this is a well-intended action. But if this was if you're a part of a company and you were or a part of a startup or an enterprise or whatever scale, if you're working with a couple of people, if you've got this, someone might think like, oh, you forgot to pass the to-do list. Oh, okay, I'll fix it for you. And it's like, well, no, you don't need to do it because it's a well-intended action. But this conveys it a lot more clearly and explicitly, right? So, right, so save that, and then yeah, that looks good. So let's start it. Let's go here and cancel that, and then run it. Npm start, and that should be fine. That's fine. So let's go back here, add a our list thing. So add that. Shopping list is here. Housekeeping should also be here. Laundry, etc. I don't know, whatever. I don't really care. And then send that again. Let's get all of them so we know that this works. So we've got both of the list items here. Exciting stuff. Let's add another endpoint to then kind of say, okay, give me by this ID, right? So 3000 and list ID, and then just pass the ID in. So we know the IDs because we get them here. So you can then say, okay, give me this ID, and then hopefully, oh, it says 404 not found. Interesting. Was it list HTTP localhost? That's weird. So ID and then to-do list ID, and then it says 404, which is really interesting. List, and then we're basically doing list / ID. Oh, it's a post. Yeah, of course, it's a get, right? So get that. Yay, perfect. So the mistake, if it's not clear, I was trying to do a post on that, and then obviously the post doesn't exist because there's only a get endpoint on that. So you have to do a get on that. Yeah, so that's perfect. That's what we want, right? We want to be able to fetch one thing and one thing only. Let's go back quickly and try and get the other item and see if it still works with the other item, and it's not just that it gets the first item of the list. Whoops, what am I trying to do? Yep, that, and then send that, and now we've got the housekeeping one. So 58E755 is housekeeping, of course, 58E755, and we get all the information. We get created on, description, name, whatever, right? So that's perfect. Right, so that's amazing. That's awesome stuff. So now that we've got that nailed down perfectly, we can sort of add more features to it. So in the next one, we'll look at how to delete a specific to-do list by still using the stubs, but we'll try and get the ball rolling. And then eventually, as we kind of have a mature API, a mature set of endpoints that you can call, with that, okay, so now we're quite clear on what we're doing. Let's now try and use the database and go and deep dive into that complexity. So yeah, amazing. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.